It's always an enormous relief when the 4 a.m. kickoff turns out to be a banger.
It made you think, like, we've got a long day ahead of us when your 4 a.m. alarm went off. And then suddenly you're like, you know what? If any of the games are half as good as this, then we're in for a good day right here.
I think plenty of games were half as good as this.
Yeah. That might have been the game of the day.
I think it probably was. I mean, the Wales one's hard to divorce from context and everything as Welsh fans, but I thought it was great. Yeah. Now, obviously, if you're Scottish, your mileage may vary, but as a neutral watching this, it was as entertaining a game of rugby as I've seen for a very long time. If you're someone who hasn't watched it, in the UK, Premier Sports will have a replay available. Elsewhere, it'll be around. So please have a look if you can find it. Stan Sport in Australia, Sky Sports in New Zealand.
The highlights do not do this game justice.
They really do not. The game was basically a long highlights package of tries not quite being scored.
Yeah.
It felt a bit like the 73 Barbarians New Zealand game in that it had so many near miss, brilliant scores. You had Wainaqolo being unplayable, being so good. Scotland didn't get much control of the game. They'd have periods, where they were completely on top, and then Fiji would get the ball once and they'd go 90 metres and they'd kind of suddenly be completely in control.
It was mega because, from a result perspective, a lot of Scottish fans are really disappointed with this and are saying Townsend out because of this. Yeah. On one hand, I think it does show how far Scotland have come, that they can have most of their starting team away on the Lions tour and be disappointed to lose to a pretty much full-strength Fiji team. Yeah. And not only that, but as you mentioned, Hurrell Waningo was genuinely unplayable in that game.
It was the best. It's up there with the best I've seen any player play this year. Yeah. Never mind this weekend. It was obviously the best I saw anyone play this weekend.
And obviously, phenomenal. He's been doing that a lot for too long in terms of picking up moments where he breaks the line. So he is the top for defenders beaten. He has been basically his whole time.
He
for too long.
Broke the European club rugby record for most defenders beaten in one game.
He's silly.
Late last year. Yeah.
And he's so slippery and just incredible to watch. The try that he scored was phenomenal, and we'll talk about it now. Fiji string a lot of passes together in this passage of play, and Wainaqolo just kind of picks it up in quite a loose situation and fends one off. The strength and power behind this fend, by the way, is crazy. You can see Tom Jordan getting
most
shifting.
Players as strong as him, you can kind of tell the strength in the upper body or something, right?
Yeah.
Him, it seems to be purely arms.
Yeah.
He has this handoff that is unbelievable in the way he can just bounce out and ride through contact.
And he doesn't look that huge. He's a big lad, obviously, but it's not like Duan van der Merwe. You look at him and you're like, his arms look massive.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas Wainaqolo, they look quite, not skinny, but they look quite normal.
Yeah.
And the amount of power he gets into that fend. And then, to slip away from two more tacklers. Kyle Rowe is in quite a good position here to get him down. Yeah. And he just slides past him. Yeah. And Darcy Graham tries to catch up with him. But again, he's just such an unbelievable finisher. And that try was... We'd already spent the whole game back and forth just texting saying, Wainaqolo's incredible.
He's so good.
And just every time he got the ball, he was slipping through tackles or he was putting other people through holes, particularly in the backfield when they kicked to him, and he would just run it back.
Or kick to anyone else, and they just spin it wide to him.
Yeah.
The try he almost created, or the almost try he created for Joshua Tuasova was phenomenal again. The way he looks up and is able to just find things that aren't even mismatches, right? The thing he's looking for often, I find, is the kind of the eye line of the opposition player. And it's if they turn to look at the options at his back, he will just go around them.
Yeah.
And he's so good at reading body language and tackle choice as well. And I think a lot of it he's never thinking about, right? But you see someone start to go low on him and he'll suddenly skim around the other way. You see someone start to go high on him and he'll kind of duck around. He's so good at reading instinctively the body, and you physically don't have the time to think about this, right, in the moment. But the way he can assess what a defender's going for and the choices they're making is amazing. And then you throw in the fact that Fiji's shape is so built around this, right? And we saw they ran some really interesting patterns that I really want to kind of break down, right? Because we are seeing this kind of wave in international rugby of moving kind of away from the arrowhead formation that's been so dominant for sort of 10 years, of forward setting with the arrowhead and then kind of smashing it up and two clear out, or whether there's tip-on options if they need them. We're seeing increasingly teams set up with just a flat line, right? Because you can get there, pretty much just as quickly. You basically want one, at most two forwards clearing out as much as you can to speed the ball up. And so those two forwards, it's easier for them to dip round into another pod or join a new shape. And there's so much more beside this, right? We'll get into this down the line another time, right? What Fiji are doing is really interesting because they've sort of evolved the arrowhead in a different direction, and they've really like changed their shape in order to bring those individuals into it. And so they are playing those flat lines, but they're often playing like two interlinking flat lines kind of together, or they're playing Tuasova in as one of those forwards, or any of their backs really, you're all sliding in. And the way they don't really play with a boot anymore.
It's weird, yeah. It's not like a distribution-y boot.
No.
It's more like how teams use their wingers in a boot, like as a strike runner.
As a strike runner,
and they do that with basically everybody, even Muntz really, because Muntz really likes to invite defenders to come onto him because he's so collected under pressure. You look at the try that Ravovo scored, where they scored it off the very simple shape of hitting up with 12, Mangala running short of him and Muntz coming out of the boot.
Yeah.
It was still very similar because like Muntz hits this really, really flat, trying to invite a defender to come up and like leather him essentially. And he flings it over Rowe's head and Rayasi gets it and is so nonchalant with the timing of his pass to Ravovo on the wing. It's one of those that they use all of their players like that. Mangala, I mentioned a minute ago. Again, he likes to come in as like a semi-distributor, but in a way where if they leave half a gap, he'll just go for a one-handed offload instead of actually trying to fling it wide, you know? And you look at like Armstrong Ravula off the bench, I really, really rated, who came on. I think he was playing as a fullback, but Muntz was kind of just slipping out and doing whatever the hell he wanted at that point as well.
I think this was it though, that the positions sort of faded away. The only position it felt like anyone was definitely playing was Muntz. And still Muntz was running as a strike runner and so on, but it was more that kind of inside in.
But that kind of changed when Armstrong Rayasi and Villamono Batitu both came on.
Batitu I thought was a really interesting change because he came on for Tuasova and they still ran the same pattern of him smashing it up and him being used as a big ball carrier.
I still think of him as a ball carrier though, even though he played 10 in the World Cup, weirdly.
Exactly. But like it allowed him to also slip in and distribute a bit and change up the picture a bit, which I thought was interesting and a really positive kind of change for Fiji.
100%.
But I think there's just something very interesting in the way they're using their players and using these positions. And we're currently in a stage, right, where there isn't really a meta for attacking rugby. Like, everyone is sort of doing different things because we've worked out ways to get on top of the defence, and everyone's doing their own things with it. And I think that's really exciting because Fiji found so many. They played so flat, like Sam Prendergast doing the ironing levels of flat. Like, they were positively just on the game line, carrying, then setting another phase up. So few passes, allowing them, and you think of it as Fiji being the opposite, right? But like, I thought Kuravali was exceptional at 9.
Yes,
well. He was really good. And yes, he managed the game well. Yes, core skills, whatever. But the way he just brought forwards onto the ball, the way he just got his pack going forward, the way he did the occasional pick up and go to kind of bring players and invite defence up so they can bring them over the game line.
And it really works with the specific forward pack they've got, who are all really good at footwork. At footwork and short carries and the offload as well is like bringing that into the game. You look at, they've got players like Ikanaveri is such a good short carrier. Like the way he chops his feet and just like by really cheap meters on what looks like quite a disposable carry. He is worth 1 metre more than he should be.
He also spoke so well after the game, like him having taken the captaincy.
I like him as captain.
I thought he looks like a really great captain. I've never been in a huddle with him, but he spoke so well after the game. You're like, oh, this guy, like he'd follow this guy, right? And obviously has now led them on one of his first games as the full-time captain to a famous win.
Yeah. And also, you look at like Mayana Vanua, who's been at Northampton, who's had an outstanding season for them. Again, is a proper athletic runner, really good offloader, really good at that. As you say, like starting quite flat and just going like, come at me and I will adapt to what you do.
Numerous times during the game, we saw Scotland really panic and put a second or even third tackler in on him because he always carries it like he's going to offload. And he is a player that's impossible to read because he is so easy to read. Because you look at him and like, oh, it's a big lad who's going to offload. Oh, I should have guessed that he's Fijian, isn't he? And then it means that you naturally jam in. And the amount of space that was created by having these guys who can do that. Scotland, I think, went in with a broad and general game plan, and in terms of defence in particular, and didn't adapt it to how Fiji play.
Yeah.
And you do have to adapt a little bit. And you look at Steve Tandy in past as defence coach, has adapted incredibly well to how Ireland or New Zealand and other teams play. And I think Scotland broadly, and it feels weird for a game they lost to a team they expected to beat, but I thought they actually defended pretty well considering what was coming at them. And the number of times they did shut down promising attacks. And the highlights doesn't do it justice, right? Just how many line breaks Fiji were. That sounds like undermining their defence, but like how many chances where Fiji did something bullshit, where they had an individual beat someone one-on-one or something where Scotland's system had it covered. And normally, if it's, Tommy Freeman or some other like excellent winger who might be better, you might say, as a technical rugby player, but do they have that kind of bullshit factor that so many of that Fijian backline do, if not possibly all of them, right?
Mainly Wainaqolo, but yes.
But also like Revovo was fairly quiet, like he had a few breaks, but you had so many of these players who have that kind of bullshit factor. Them breaking them one-on-one, beating them one-on-one, and then you also had like Scotland had 3 yellow cards and so on. The defence stood up to a lot of stress testing, right, and still managed to survive.
And that's it. It was particularly that first half hour, like Scotland defended so brutally and were absolutely brilliant.
They kept...
And
again, the highlights didn't do this justice, right? But like Fiji's first try came from a maul about half an hour in. They had basically been breaking the line and living in the 22 the entire game there.
Yeah. And Scotland kept them at bay for such a long time. And it eventually reached a point, because Fiji were offloading and running so hard, that they were having to scramble constantly. And I think that's what tired them out in the lead up to the Revovo try that I mentioned a minute ago. And it made them kind of tighten up a little bit.
And leads to staying massively overreading the play.
Yeah.
Because he's worried, because he's seen this happen time and time again.
You mentioned there like some of the discipline bits that I've never felt as sorry for somebody as I felt for Darcy Graham in that game.
Mate.
Because it's like Darcy Graham is one of those players who will feel really hard done by that he's not on the Lions tour, and justifiably so, because he's been brilliant all year, right? And he had to spend all game trying to tackle Wainaqolo and trying to tackle Joshua Tuisova, who would sometimes just stand on the wing and just bottle him over. And like he did a good job of tackling those, and then he goes and bloody gets 2 yellow cards. And there's a part of me that thought like he knew what he was doing. He just didn't want to partake in this game anymore. He didn't want to play against Wainaqolo anymore. He rage quit.
Both of them were yellow cards. Yeah, he just turned the router off. No, I hear your Darcy Graham and I raise you Cam Redpath.
Oh, yeah.
Because...
oh, man. Anyone playing opposite.
I think Gregor Townsend owes him at least like a box of Quality Street or something.
Yeah.
Because, frankly, like the game plan he drew up seemingly was, we will run an intricate move. All of them end in Cam Redpath running into Joshua Tuisova. And there are all these like little switch passes and little flick it out the back and like inside ball or whatever. And they ran the most elaborate move. And in the end, every single one came back to, Cam, you're running to Tuisova. You'll get us over the gain line and then we'll play to an edge next phase, right? He got over the gain line maybe once, which is a great return.
That's a great
Tuisova.
achievement.
And Tuisova was having one of his best games in a long time. Like,
yeah. He was
at
brutal.
club level of late has perhaps not lived up to the hype or the
Sometimes
size.
he phones it in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was not so.
No.
He was like maniacally up for this game.
Bear in mind,
being Cam Redpath and just being like, are you sure?
Bear in mind, like Sione Tuipulotu,
Fergus, please.
who is
I've got a family.
The starting 12 over Cam Redpath, and not only that, but is a much bigger and more physical man than Cam Redpath.
I think they're equally physical men.
Yes.
They're both physical. Yeah.
When he was asked who the hardest player to tackle he's ever come against was, he said Joshua Tuisova.
Yeah.
As has literally any pro rugby player who's been asked that before. Like the amount of interviews you see where someone asks that question, they'll all list a few names and then they'll go, oh wait, no, it's Joshua Tuisova, isn't it? Like, God, I feel for Cam Redpath. As you say, like when they go for that move of hitting 12 up, having the hit in the boot with 13 and 10, same again. Getting, like, that is easy enough on paper when he's running it against a semi-opposed defence in training. When he's running it against Joshua bloody Tuisova, no thanks. You can have the ball straight away, Fergus.
I think, to talk about Scotland a bit, right?
Yes.
I think there's something interesting, because I did wonder during this game, is Scotland's game plan just weirdly incompatible with playing Fiji? Mm-hmm. That defensively, right? Scotland like to wrap the ball carriers up a lot and slow the ball down. They just weren't able to do this against Fiji, right? The offloading game, the speed of their passing, the fact that it wasn't like Japan where you take the pace out of them and they kind of fall apart, right? Like Japan want phase on phase on phase as their speed. Fiji want an individual passage to be incredibly quick. They want it to be like 7, so they have to be broken open, right? And I think there's something in that defensively. They kind of their defence just didn't work against Fiji, and I think that isn't a sign the defence is bad. I think they did an incredible job defensively. I think fundamentally, though, the way they defend, which is, again, often normally 2 into every tackle and so on. Yes, you want to wrap the ball carrier up, right? But like, if they manage to get away anyway, which happens with Fiji, if you've got so many ball carriers and all of them are able to offload one-handed as they could, you then aren't able to get the physical numbers across, and it becomes an issue out wide, and it becomes, you're giving the wings more space, which is something they end up doing. It's trusting those wingers a bit more, and keeping the wingers very flat as well. Like, they're in the backfield much less, which helps Dylan van der Merwe out massively. Yeah. But really helps on that front. I wondered about that. But also from an attacking point of view, right? Like, so much of it is one game line carry, then we play to width, then we work from there. And so much of it is attacking kicking, right? And so what we saw was one front, them not getting up the game line because Cam Redpath was running to us over every time and going like, oh God, do I have to?
Or sidestep and run into Mangala, brilliant, good luck.
Yeah. And then the other angle of this was their kicking game really didn't work. Like, it completely removed one of their biggest strengths, the way they generate their attacking ball generally, which is Scotland score most of the tries off kick return. And like, line out's the other big thing, but generally that comes from them kicking long, them getting line outs in better positions, right? Because they like to slap the ball down the middle. They like to get bounces, so then the opposition are forced to kick it back.
Yeah.
Fiji didn't do that. They ran it back. And they generally made 50, 60 metres doing so.
Well, I was about to ask, what do we think of the Fergus Burke of it all? Because I think it's probably fair to say a bit of a mixed bag, because on one hand, I think if you individually look at all the moments Fergus Burke had, you kind of go like, oh, I think he had a good game. Like, there's no point where I look at it and go like, oh, he made an error there, that was a really bad read and so on. Yet at the same time, I didn't get a real sense of presence of like, this guy is going to grab the game by the scruff more than Caleb Muntz is. Because Caleb Muntz from like about minute 10 onwards kind of like went, right, okay, this is what we need to do. This is how we're going to win this game. And he kicked superbly. And once again, like, it's a bit of a cliche, but it also is true that Caleb Muntz is looking after the other 14 players around him, that they're all like chucking the ball about. And he's more than capable of doing that, but he's not afraid to just go, let's shut things down and just play in the opposition half. And I feel like Fergus Burke was trying to do that, but I just didn't get the impression that he was doing it as successfully as Muntz. What do you reckon?
I get that. Yeah, I think Burke is worth persisting with.
I agree.
I don't think this was a great game for him. I think it's a tough assignment.
You're saying drop Finn Russell. That's what you're saying.
I just think Scotland done this thing a lot under Townsend, right? Which is they find a new 10. Generally, it's someone who becomes Scottish eligible or like was trying to qualify for another nation or play for another nation, and then goes like, oh,
big up Jaco van der Walt. What a guy.
I'll throw him a lot in with Scotland. Fine. And then after a handful of caps, they discard them. Yeah. And they go, oh, they weren't the answer. They're not Finn, though, are they? And then Finn plays 80 minutes of every game. And they
remember Ben Healy?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this seems to happen very regularly, that they just discard these guys. Tom Jordan had the smart idea of becoming a utility player.
That's smart.
Which has really worked out for him now.
Yeah.
Rather than the 10 he came through as at Glasgow.
Holy shit, there's loads of them, isn't there?
There's so many. There's so many of these players that just crop up and you're like, oh, what are you doing here? Tom Heathcote. Sitting in the background of all of them.
That was a long time ago. But
time ago.
Mind you, Gregor was still around, wasn't he?
Probably.
Yeah.
It was
the Verne era, but still.
This is also kind of a full circle moment because Gregor's, third game for Scotland? He lost to Fiji in Fiji.
Yeah.
And then they return here. Could it be his last game? Could it be a full circle moment? Who knows? I think Burke's worth persisting with. I think there was something very raw there. I think he's been broadly good for Saracens with some rough moments.
It's his first cap.
So, I think he's worth giving another go.
And he's been very good for Saracens. He runs and attack extremely well.
Yeah.
And
there's rough areas to his game. And there's things he's less brilliant at.
Deserves to play at international level, though, for sure.
We'll come on to the, broadly, if you were a Scotland fan, and you were to reflect on this game, is this a, let's fire the coach, let's burn everything down, we lost to Fiji, or is this it's one of those things, we're missing a lot of Lions, wasn't to be?
I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think there's elements of both because, they've missed out a lot of Lions and that is such a good team that they came up against. And they, could have beaten them. I wouldn't necessarily say they nearly beat them because I think Fiji were quite comprehensively the better team in that game.
They were.
But at the same, and I don't want to patronise Scotland because of the quality of players that they had. We mentioned Darcy Graham, is a player.
Jamie Ritchie and Roy Darge on the flanks.
Yeah, exactly. These are guys that we've talked about as potential Lions contenders. not talking about in that kind of context, but like I thought Ewan Ashman was brilliant.
He was.
I thought he had a
really
really,
good.
really good game. And
Back to
they've
his best.
got enough players around, like in this squad, that they should beat a lot of kind of like so-called tier 2 teams, but also Fiji are bloody good.
Yeah.
So there is that. At the same time, not relevant to necessarily this game, more on the back of the Six Nations, there is a big part of me that wondered, has Gregor taken this team as far as he physically can? And I think given the stat you just brought up of literally this is where they were when he took over, it doesn't do anything to condemn that, does it?
Yeah. I think I'm in a similar boat. I don't think this game was a disaster. I think if things were going well and you had this game, like, if they'd come second in the Six Nations, say, which they easily could have with a couple of bounty balls, separately, and then this game happens exactly as it did, right? I don't think it'd be a disaster. I think this game itself was fine.
You'd brush under the
I think
carpet,
you've got to
wouldn't
look at what this meant for Fiji, which is the first time they've had a tier 1 nation come down and play in a very long time, certainly post-COVID.
Scotland are the only team who've done it twice within a 10-year gap.
Which is amazing. Yeah. So they haven't had these opportunities. They haven't had these chances for a very long time. You had that enormous packed crowd. You had, like, I've heard talk of how this has been the only thing people are talking about in Fiji for last week. Like, this has been it.
That was such a good crowd as well.
They were fantastic.
It's like going to a rave, going to a rugby game in Fiji, isn't it? Like, everyone's so up for it and just bouncing.
So, okay, we won't be able to find the footage of this because I have no idea when it happened. It'd be too hard to comb through and find it, right? But there was one moment during the game where, because he did like a wide shot a few times, you can see there's motorway by this stadium, and there was one car just pulled up next to it. The guy got out of his car and just stood next to it watching the game for a bit from like a vantage point where you could see it. And that was clearly it. And there were more people, like, they didn't seem to be in seats when the stadium was packed. They were just standing around. And it was like an amazing atmosphere.
I love it.
And they were so up for it. And I think this Fijian team, like we mentioned, Toia Suva this is the most up for him. I've seen him up for a game since the World Cup at least. From any fixture possible since the 2019 World Cup. There's a bunch of those players who looked uniquely motivated for this game. And I think you've got to take some of like, this meant everything to Fiji into this. This is this is their day. They've been waiting for since the last World Cup, possibly for longer, since COVID even. So that was an amazing thing to witness. You've got to bear that into the result. That brings them up a bit. You losing your lines brings you down a bit. Fine. I do also think that the argument that Gregor has taken this team as far as he can is growing. And it's the same argument I mentioned it a few times in the Women's Six Nations around Brian Eason. And I think there's a very strong argument that he has. The job of any coach is to make themselves irrelevant, the coaching maxim that you've heard any number of coaches bring up. I feel like Brian Eason's kind of made himself... I was feeling that. Then they, went and pulled off a couple of really great results at the end of the Six Nations. So maybe he has earned himself another swing of the bat. But like, I feel like Gregor Townsend, these players could run his game plan in his sleep. I don't think they're getting better for him being there. So the risk is, right, Franco Smith is the obvious contender to take over. His Italy team weren't great, but also he broke a lot of eggs so that, Quesada now can make an omelette.
The thing is there's a risk to it because I think we all know where Scotland will be if Gregor stays on for another 10 years. They'll be pretty much where they are now, which is perfectly fine. And now they've got a load of players on Lions tour, which before Gregor came in, they were getting 2 or 3 in, right? Whereas if he goes, there's a chance they become shit. There just is. And there's a chance they get better. It's just, does the SRU want to take that risk?
And they clearly don't.
The question is, are they bored of where they are at the moment?
And like Gregor is a saleable coach. He's he's like good with media, good with sponsors, easy to send out. Like all of that comes into consideration, right? And like he is easier if you're the Scottish Rugby Union and you're sending someone out to do a corporate event. He's a much easier guy to send out as a Scotland legend than Franco Smith, like a handful of caps Springbok, right? There's loads of sides that come into this. Ultimately, we're getting into another conversation that is maybe for another time. But broadly, I do think exactly what you said, that this will be Scotland's level. Like, they are pretty much where they were just after Gregor took over.
Relative, isn't it?
I think he's moving forward a bit, but like they haven't moved forward that much since about 2020. I kind of am at a point now where I don't expect them to win a Six Nations under him. I don't think they ever will. And it comes down to, do you think that's good enough? Do you want to go like, okay, we'll be broadly great, we'll beat England for the Calcutta Cup most years. We'll have the odd brilliant result against the others. We'll consistently beat Italy and Wales. But but we'll have the odd slip up against a team like Fiji or Tonga, and they'll just come over and not pull our pants down a bit. Do you accept that? I don't know.
That's the question.
It's not for me to decide.
No, it's not.
It's for Mark Dobson to take his billion pounds a year that he's using to currently sue the weather and go, well, that hailstorm hasn't done anything to me. Maybe I'll pay some of it to Gregor.
Maybe he should instead consider suing Hurrell Waningo for being too good at rugby. That's just not allowed.
He's too good at rugby. Too long, let him go.
Imagine
Just let him go.
Like, you can have him play for your rugby team and they're like, no,
we're all right.
No, we will stick with Leicester Wainaqolo, please and thank you.
We'll find some random French kid from the Pro D2 and we'll pay him 20 quid instead. And he'll probably turn out to be the best player you've ever seen. Yeah. But we don't know that yet. Because it turns out that Fijian we had was already the best player you've ever seen.
I mean, Leicester Wainaqolo is real good.
He's pretty good.
Yeah. Not as good as him, though.
Should we sign him?
Yeah, all right. He can come and work for Squid Rugby.
He can go.
Hurrell Waningo, if you're watching, you want to come and work for Squid Rugby, let us know.
We can't pay you.
Not got the budget for that.
But if you want to come,
if you want to do voluntary work experience.
We've got an intern place going specifically for Hurrell Waningo.
Yeah, if you are that good at beating defenders, you can come and work for us free of charge.
Yeah, Darcy Graham, this is also open to you.
Yeah,
you can live in that caravan again.
Checks inbox. Blair Murray.